Happy birthday, you piece of trash. My daughter-in-law's toast cut through the air, colder than ice, while her mother burst out laughing beside her. Trash is still worth more than that woman. The whole lavish banquet hall echoed with mocking laughter. My son just turned away and downed his drink, avoiding his own mother's gaze. I'm Eleanor. In my 67 years, I've never bowed my head to anyone. Everything I have wasn't handed to me. It came from years of hard work, kneading dough at 4 in the morning until my hands were swollen and misshapen. The aches in my bones are a constant reminder. No one, not even those hiding behind the mask of family, has the right to steal what I've shed blood, sweat, and tears for. They think I'm old and weak? I just smiled, my fingers gripping the remote control. One press of a button, and everything would change forever. Are you ready for the show to end? Don't blink, because the real storm is just getting started. I stood alone in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, holding a glass of expensive champagne loosely in my hand. 67 years, and I never imagined I'd be celebrating my birthday somewhere so fake. The high ceiling sparkled with chandeliers that looked like 1,000 diamond teardrops waiting to fall. The overwhelming scent of lilies mixed with the smell of money and designer perfumes, forming a suffocating cloud. The room was split in two, as clearly as oil and water. On the left was my world. Mrs. Martha, my old neighbor from Brooklyn Heights, sat nervously in her nicest floral dress, clutching her worn leather purse. Beside her was Mr. Chen, the dry cleaner who helped me in my early days. He fumbled with his crooked tie, clearly out of place among all these strangers. They looked at me with sympathy in their eyes. The rest belonged to Tiffany, my daughter-in-law. Women in tight silk dresses laughed loudly about ski trips in Aspen or $1,000 facials. Men in tailored suits held wine glasses and chatted about the stock market. None of them cared whose birthday it was. To them, this was just another excuse to gather and show off. A soft tap on the microphone rang out. The string quartet stopped playing. Tiffany stepped onto the small stage. Tonight, she wore a bright red dress with a high slit. Standing beside her was Cedric, my son. He was in a black tux, hair slicked back, shoulders stiff with tension. He held her hand, but I could feel the tremble in his fingers from across the room. Tiffany took the microphone, flashing a smile that had clearly been rehearsed in front of a mirror. Ladies and gentlemen, her voice dripped with honey, we're here today to celebrate the 67th birthday of my mother-in-law, Mrs. Eleanor. A woman who is incredibly simple. She dragged out the word simple, emphasizing it just enough. Her friends in the crowd giggled. In their world, simple meant poor, outdated. Beneath them, applause filled the room. I stood still, face unreadable. Tiffany stepped down from the stage. Her heels clicked loudly against the marble floor. She walked straight toward me, arms outstretched like the picture-perfect daughter-in-law. She hugged me tight. The stench of Chanel perfume hit me hard. Her arms locked around me, her cheek brushing mine. Then she leaned in close. Her breath, heavy with alcohol, hit my ear with words sharp as blades. Happy birthday, you piece of trash. You should be grateful I lowered myself to step into this pathetic family. Enjoy tonight, old woman. I was stunned. At that moment, Karen, Tiffany's mother, walked up beside me. She leaned in just enough for me to hear her, smirking as she whispered, "Honey, don't be so harsh. At least garbage can be recycled." She can't. The blood in my veins froze. I wasn't shocked by their rudeness. I was shocked by how shameless they were. I glanced at Cedric. My son was standing just a few steps away. He'd heard it. I knew he had. I could see his jaw clench, his hand gripping his wine glass so tightly it turned pale. But then, what did he do? He looked away. He avoided my eyes, turned to clink glasses with a stranger, and downed the rest of his bitter wine. His silence hit harder than any insult Tiffany had thrown at me. The son I had raised with sweat and tears had chosen to side with someone who humiliated his mother. He'd sold out his integrity for this polished, glittering facade. In that moment, the mother in me broke, but from those broken pieces, another Eleanor emerged. Colder, sharper, ruthless. My hands didn't tremble. I held my champagne glass steady, the surface of the drink as calm as ever. I pulled Tiffany's hand off me, stepped back, and looked her straight in the eyes. I smiled, not my usual warm smile. This was the smile I wore in business meetings when I knew my opponent had walked into a trap. Tiffany faltered, the confusion flashing briefly in her eyes. "Thank you, Tiffany," I said loudly, my voice echoing through the silence. I turned and walked slowly to the stage. Every step was firm. I took the mic. Its weight in my hand steadied me more than ever. I scanned the room, the smug guests, the greedy in-laws, and my cowardly son. Thanks for your special words, I said clearly, my tone cutting through the air. I'm truly touched. And in return, I've prepared a little gift for you. The entire room went still. Tiffany and Karen exchanged glances, smug, curious. I calmly opened my black velvet clutch. Inside, there was no money, no jewelry. I pulled out a small gray remote. My thumb hovered over the red button in the middle. I looked at Tiffany one last time. Her eyes were starting to waver. But it was too late. I pressed the button with certainty. All the crystal chandeliers went dark. The entire ballroom was swallowed in pitch-black silence. Gasps filled the air. The giant LED screen behind me, once flashing fake happy family photos, went black. Then the sound of a projector whirred to life. Dry and mechanical, it echoed in the dead silence. The screen stayed dark. But in my mind, a memory lit up, clearer than all the chandelier lights that had just gone out. The memory of Flower, of the bone-chilling cold of a Brooklyn winter 40 years ago. It's not a faded image. It's vivid, like it happened just yesterday. I'm no longer standing on a glamorous stage. I'm in a 5-square-meter kitchen. The clock says 4 a.m. Outside, the January snow is falling thick, covering the empty streets of Brooklyn Heights in white. The cold seeps through the doorframe, cutting straight to the bone. But inside the kitchen, the air is warm. It's the smell of yeast, of melting butter, of caramelized sugar and vanilla. I looked down at my hands. Not the ones holding a champagne glass now. These were red from cold water, rough, and covered in flour. Those were the darkest years, but also the beginning of everything. My husband, Michael, was a firefighter with the FDNY. He was the best man I've ever known, with broad shoulders and a smile that could melt ice. But God tends to call angels home early. Michael died in a warehouse fire in Queens when Cedric was only 3. He left behind a neatly folded flag, a medal, and a small life insurance payout. And a hole in my soul that nothing could fill. I had no degree. I didn't know how to use a computer. The only weapon I had was my grandmother's butter cookie recipe, and a mother's instinct to survive. I bet everything on that one shot. I bought the best flour, the most expensive sticks of butter. Every night, when Cedric was fast asleep in his crib in the corner, I went to work. I kneaded dough, rolled cookies, kept watch on the oven. The old thing didn't heat evenly, so I had to stay up all night, rotating trays so they'd bake golden, not burnt. At dawn, while the city was still sleeping, I'd place Cedric in the stroller. Underneath, instead of diapers, I packed it with brown wax paper bundles of cookies tied up with twine. The two of us went from street to street, into every little store, gas station, and office building trying to make a sale. Hi, I'm Eleanor. I make the best butter cookies in Brooklyn. Would you like to try one? Most people shook their heads. Some waved me off like I was a beggar. Some days, I walked until my legs gave out, my thin canvas shoes soaked through from the snow, and didn't sell a single cookie. On those days, I'd buy a cheap bagel, split it in half for Cedric, half for me. Watching him eat happily made my heart clench. You can't give up. For Cedric, you're not allowed to fall. Then came the turning point. It was a gloomy Tuesday morning. I stepped into Mr. Kowalski's deli, a grumpy Polish man's shop. He was yelling on the phone because his dessert supplier had delivered late. I gathered every ounce of courage and placed a cookie bundle on the counter. The smell of butter filled the room, pushing out even the scent of pickles. Mr. Kowalski, I said, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Please, just try one. If you don't like it, I'll leave right away. But if you do, I promise to deliver every morning at 7 a.m. Rain or shine. He looked at me, then at the golden cookie. He picked it up and took a bite. The cookie snapped with a crunch. He chewed slowly. His thick eyebrows relaxed. He didn't say a word, just reached for a second one. Then a third. 50 pieces, he said bluntly, crumbs on his lips. Every morning. 50 cents each. Can you do it? Yes. My heart was about to burst out of my chest. Thank you, sir. That was the first contract. 50 cookies a day, $25 in revenue. A small amount of money, but proof that I could survive with my own 2 hands. From then on, word spread. Cookies from Grandma's bakery started popping up everywhere. 2 years later, I was able to rent a small abandoned shop. The ground floor became the bakery, and upstairs was our home. I painted and fixed it all myself. The smell of fresh paint mixed with flour became the scent of home. Business took off like wildfire. But I made a crucial decision. I hid our wealth from Cedric. With the profits, I didn't buy fancy cars or luxury brands. Following the advice of one of Michael's old friends, I quietly invested. I bought the very building we were renting, bought land in the suburbs while it was still dirt cheap, bought blue-chip stocks from major companies. The bank account kept growing, but our lives stayed the same. I still drove that old 90 seconds Buick that roared like a tractor. Cedric still wore clothes from clearance racks. I taught him how to sweep floors, wash baking trays, bow and thank customers. I wanted him to understand that every dollar came from sweat. I wanted him to grow into a man like his father, honest and hardworking. Once, when Cedric was 12, he came running home, eyes watery. "Mom, why does Johnny have a new game console and I don't? Why are we so poor? I hate the smell of flour on my clothes." I remember that moment clearly. I stopped kneading the dough, wiped my hands on my apron, and knelt down to his eye level. I held his little hands in my rough ones. "Cedric," I said firmly, "money is like yeast, son." He looked up at me, confused. "A little yeast makes the dough rise and taste good. But if you're greedy and add too much, it ruins the whole batch. It turns sour and bitter. I don't give you lots of money because I want you to make your own yeast in life. Only what you make yourself will ever be worth keeping." He nodded, even if I knew he didn't fully get it yet. I pulled him into a hug, silently hoping this tough love would shield him one day. The reel of memories rewound in my mind to a Tuesday afternoon, when I was doing inventory in the dusty little office behind the bakery. The landline rang. It was Cedric. "Mom, are you free this weekend? I want to bring someone really special to meet you." His voice was excited, but I could hear a flicker of nervousness only a mother would notice. He was scared I might judge. Sunday afternoon, the quiet of our Brooklyn Heights street was shattered by the roar of a sports engine. A shiny burgundy Maserati pulled up out front, its tires grinding against the old brick curb. Cedric rushed over to open the passenger door like a dutiful servant. Out stepped Tiffany. She wore a tight Balmain dress with oversized gold buttons, the kind I'd only ever seen in fashion magazines. Giant sunglasses covered most of her face, even though the sun was already low. Tiffany took them off and gave a perfectly practiced smile. But her eyes didn't smile. Those pale blue eyes scanned me like a barcode reader, starting at my worn-out sweater, down to my hands dusted with cinnamon, and finally to the cracks in the wooden floor. A flash of a sneer crossed her face, gone in an instant, replaced by a fake friendly expression. I invited them to dinner. The smell of my signature oven-baked beef ribs, my famous pot roast, filled the entire house. But when I served the plate of tender meat stew, Tiffany looked at it like I'd just served poison. "Oh, it looks delicious," she said, her pitch unnaturally high. "But I'm on keto. I don't eat carbs or red meat." She picked up a tiny piece of carrot, chewed it like she was eating gravel. The meal went on awkwardly. Suddenly, Tiffany's elbow knocked over the salt and pepper shaker, sending it crashing to the floor. "Damn it!" The words flew out of her mouth, sharp, loud, and street-like, totally clashing with the dainty, sweet tone she'd been faking. Instantly, Tiffany clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide with panic. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm such a klutz." Cedric chuckled and bent down to help her pick it up, but I locked that tone into memory. During the meal, Tiffany placed her cream-colored Hermes Birkin bag on the empty chair beside her. The warm light hit it directly. I, someone who spent a lifetime working with her hands and attention to detail, glanced over. Something was off. The stitching on the handle was slightly crooked. The leather on the corner looked stiff, almost plastic, reflecting light in a way real leather never would. It was a replica, a very high-end fake, just like its owner. I decided to test her. I dabbed my mouth with a napkin and asked gently, "I heard your dad's working on a big project. Is he partnering with Vornado Realty Trust or the related companies over at Hudson Yards? I read they're taking over that whole area." Tiffany froze mid-sip, set her glass down with a thud. Her eyes darted around. Yeah, my dad. He's in private business. Just a small family company, so you won't see it in the news. I don't really know the details." She dodged the question, and quickly changed the topic to her trip to Paris last week. The doubt inside me hardened into a heavy stone. Midway through dinner, Tiffany excused herself to use the restroom. It was right off the kitchen hallway, the old wooden door warped and never closing all the way. I pretended to fetch some water and stepped quietly closer, and that's when the angel's mask came off completely. Her voice was low, but it hissed through her teeth, crystal clear. God, this place is like some prehistoric museum. Smells like a disgusting old bakery. Yeah, I know, but just be patient. That idiot's already head over heels for me. A pause. Then she continued, voice full of calculation. Don't rush me. I'm still playing the sweet daughter-in-law role. Almost puked from that chewy beef. Just wait. Once I've got full control, I'm dumping that old hag straight into a nursing home. The toilet flushed loudly. I stood frozen, heart pounding, still gripping the cold water jug. I walked back to the dining table with a calm face, but a storm had started inside me. That night, after the noisy Maserati sped off, I sat across from Cedric. I tried my best to gently warn my son. Son, that girl. She doesn't seem very honest. The bag is fake. The way she talks about her job is super vague. I've got a bad feeling. Cedric jumped to his feet, face flushed with anger. He bristled like a porcupine defending its enemy. Cut it out, Mom. You're always so judgmental. Just because she's rich and beautiful and we're not. You're jealous of my happiness. Cedric, I just want what's best for you. Best for me? Or do you just want to keep me stuck in this bakery that smells like dough all day? He shouted, voice shaking with rage. Stop forcing your old-fashioned views on my life. Tiffany loves me, and I love her. End of story. He stormed upstairs and slammed the door shut. The bang rattled the picture frames on the wall. That was the first time my son ever raised his voice to me, over a stranger. I sat in silence in the dark. My son had been fooled, and worse, he was willingly blinding himself. Have you ever met someone who's just too good at pretending? A perfect smile, fancy clothes, but behind it all, a pit of lies. Sometimes, the instincts we old folks have, sharpened by decades of watching people, are more accurate than any hard proof. If you've ever had a gut feeling about someone from the first meeting, and it turned out to be right, leave a comment. I want to know I'm not alone in this fight. Now let's get back to the story. Cedric changed. Not slowly, but like a snap of the fingers. Just months after meeting Tiffany, my son was no longer the boy who wore cotton tees and worn-out Levi's jeans. His old Ford F-150 truck, sturdy, dependable, something he once proudly bought with his own savings, was gone. In its place, a shiny BMW 5 Series parked outside the bakery. I looked at the debt notice that came in the mail. It was a car loan. With a bakery manager's salary, after taxes and insurance, he'd have to scrape by just to keep up with those sky-high payments. But the look wasn't the scariest part. What scared me was how he started talking. He wore slick silk shirts, drowned himself in strong cologne to cover the scent of butter and cream, and began spitting out buzzwords: personal brand building, financial potential optimization, elevating one's status. That wasn't Cedric talking. That was Tiffany's voice, fed into his head night after night. The first demand came fast. I had already bought a spacious 2-bedroom apartment in Park Slope, Brooklyn, as a wedding gift for Cedric. It was in a safe area, full of trees, perfect for starting a family. But Tiffany refused to move in. She says there's no 24/7 concierge service, Mom, Cedric told me, with this snobby tone. The park view is boring. Not $1 million enough. Tiffany wants a penthouse in Hudson Yards. Floor-to-ceiling glass. Full Manhattan and Hudson River view. I set my teacup down in shock. Hudson Yards? Do you even know how expensive those places are? Where would you two even get the money to buy one? That's where we belong. A place to host Dad Tiffany's important business partners, he said flatly, his eyes drifting off toward some imagined future. We'll rent it first. Money isn't the issue. The real issue is class. I stayed quiet. I knew my son was climbing a ladder straight into the clouds, and there was no safety net waiting underneath. One rainy afternoon, Cedric came to see me. This time, he came alone. He sat down across from me, nervously turning his BMW key in his hand. Mom, he started, his voice slightly shaky. Tiffany's father. He just offered me an incredible investment opportunity. A can't-miss commercial real estate deal. But I need matching funds to join in. How much? I asked, my eyes still on the ledger. $100,000. I looked up and stared him straight in the eyes. You want to borrow $100,000 from me? Not borrow, invest. It comes with a guaranteed return of 20% a year. His eyes lit up. Show me the business plan. Where's the legal paperwork? The building permits? The capital contribution contract? Cedric stammered. He scratched his head, visibly uncomfortable. Well, he said, we didn't need all that. We're family. No need for complicated paperwork. Don't you trust me, Mom? I trust you, Cedric. But I don't trust empty promises. No paperwork, no money. End of story. I turned him down without hesitation. Cedric left, fuming. A week later, he came back. This time, the air in my living room felt heavy, like lead. His attitude was sharper. I could tell Tiffany had gotten into his head. Tiffany's right, he said, pacing the floor, his expensive leather shoes thudding against the hardwood. She says you never trusted me. A real mother would do anything for her child's future, not cling to money like this. He stopped in front of the old armchair, his father's old reading spot every morning. He nudged the chair with his foot. This chair, this wooden table, why are you still hanging on to this ancient stuff? You've been living in the past for too long. Then came the real blow. Cedric sat down across from me. He took a deep breath, his eyes cold, completely void of warmth, of any trace of mother and son. Listen to me, he began, his voice calm in a way that was chilling. This house in Brooklyn Heights? It's worth around $6, maybe $7 million right now. If you sell it. My ears went numb. What did you just say? Sell the house, he continued, his tone as steady as if he were pitching a business plan. You're old. Living alone in a big house like this is a waste. You could move to a high-end retirement community in Florida. Nice weather, nurses on call, you just relax and enjoy your golden years. And the money from selling the house? I asked, my voice trembling, not from fear, but from heartbreak. The rest, let Tiffany and me invest. That's how we make the family's money grow. Tiffany says she has the connections to double it within 2 years. We'll take care of you. You don't have to worry about a thing. My blood was boiling. I spent my whole life saving, working until my hands and feet cracked, just to keep this house, the place that holds memories of his father. And now, because of some girl he's only known for a few months, he wants to shove me into a nursing home and take everything. Invest? I shot up and knocked the glass of water off the table. Crash! The sound of glass shattering was like the sound of my heart breaking. Or you mean throwing your mother's blood, sweat, and tears, your father's sacrifice, down the throats of some con artists? This house is a legacy. It's where you grew up. Are you even human anymore, Cedric? My voice trembled with fury. Tears spilled out, but I wiped them away. I looked at him, not as my son, but as a stranger possessed by greed. Cedric stood up too, his face flushed with anger and shame. I knew it. You're so backward and selfish, he yelled, jabbing his finger at my face. You're jealous because I found someone better than you. You never wanted to see me go beyond your cheap little bakery. Get out! I pointed at the door. Out of my sight. He stormed off. But just before walking out, he turned and delivered a line sharp as a razor, cutting the last string between us. Fine. You can rot and die clinging to this crumbling house. But remember this, if you don't support the life I choose, then don't ever call me your son again. Tiffany is my future now. The door slammed shut. The whole house trembled. Silence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. I stood there, among the shattered glass on the floor, feeling like I had just lost the most precious thing in my life. Not money. My son, the one I once loved more than life itself. A few days after that explosive fight, Cedric suddenly called. Mom, I'm sorry, he said gently, but I could hear the fake tone right away. The perfect pauses, the dramatic drop in pitch, it was clearly a script Tiffany had written. Tiffany and her mom want to invite you to dinner, to make peace. They really want to understand you better. I knew it was a trap. People like them don't give up easy prey. But I still agreed. Fine. But it's at my house. If they wanted to play family, they'd play on my turf. Friday night, Tiffany showed up with her mother, Karen. The moment they stepped in, a wave of cheap perfume hit me in the face. Karen was like an older, sloppier version of her daughter. She wore a tight leopard print dress that clung to her rolls of fat, and fake gold chains that clinked loudly every time she moved. "Oh, Eleanor," she squealed, wrapping me in a hug, cold and hollow. "Finally, we meet. You're so rustic." She dragged out the word rustic with a wide smile, making it clear she meant tacky. Right then, Maria stepped out from the kitchen with a tray of drinks. Maria had been working for my family for over 30 years, as close as a sister. "Mrs." Karen squinted at her from head to toe, then leaned over to whisper to Tiffany, loud enough for the whole room to hear. "Honey, once you move in here, the first thing you need to do is replace the maid. You have to hire a professional company. These old women, who knows what kind of germs they're carrying?" The tray in Maria's hands trembled. A cookie fell onto the wooden floor. She froze, her aged eyes dropping down, hands shaking from the humiliation. Blood rushed to my face. I walked over, picked up the cookie, and gently held Maria's thin hand to reassure her. "It's okay. Go get some rest." I went back to the table, trying to keep my anger in check. That dinner was a disaster waiting to happen. I had made my family's traditional beef lasagna, layered with golden, aromatic cheese. But Tiffany just poked the piece on her plate into crumbles with her fork. Mrs. Karen covered her mouth and complained, "Oh dear, way too much cheese. My doctor on Park Avenue told me to stay far away from gluten and lactose if I want to keep my figure." I glanced at Cedric. My son was just sitting there, eating like a robot. He didn't dare look up, didn't say a word to defend his mother's cooking. That pathetic silence was unbearable. Midway through the meal, Tiffany's phone buzzed loudly on the table. She glanced at the screen, her face tensing for a split second. "Sorry, everyone," she said as she stood up. "It's an important call from the charity I'm sponsoring." She walked toward the bathroom at the end of the hallway. The old wooden door closed, but not all the way. Something inside me stirred. A gut feeling. "I'm going to get more water," I said shortly, then got up. I tiptoed down the hallway, holding my breath as I passed the bathroom door. Tiffany's voice drifted out. It wasn't that sweet, soft tone anymore. It was sharp, desperate, and slimy. "Vinny, listen to me. Just one more week. The money will be there, I promise." My heart skipped a beat. Vinny? That name reeked of something shady. There was a short pause. "I'm Innocentia." Then, Tiffany hissed, cold and venomous, "What are you worried about? That old hag is practically 6 feet under already. I'm playing the good daughter-in-law here. All it takes is one little accidental fall down the stairs, and it's over. Old bones break easy." My legs went weak. They didn't just want money, they wanted my life. "And the son?" She scoffed. "A lovesick idiot. Once she's out of the picture, I'll get him to sign over everything. The deed to this house alone is enough to pay you back. After that, I'm kicking his sorry ass out." The truth was laid bare. It was all a scam. A hungry, cold-blooded con. In that moment of terror, instead of screaming in fear, a chilling calm settled over me. I reached into my apron pocket, pulled out my phone, and with trembling fingers firmly hit record. All right. Next Tuesday, I swear. I had recorded the final blow. The loud flush of the toilet echoed. I quickly stopped the recording, went back to the kitchen, and filled the water jug to steady my breath. I returned to the table just as Tiffany walked out, the bright smile back on her face like that life or death negotiation had never happened. "Just a few little things about the fundraiser," she said, placing her hand lovingly on Cedric's shoulder. I looked at her. I looked at my foolish son. Then I smiled. "It's okay, sweetie. Make yourself at home." But my smile was no longer that of a patient, gentle mother. It was the smile of a hunter who had just set the trap. I knew their clumsy little act was over. The next morning, I woke up with a crystal-clear mind. My first thought wasn't to call a lawyer or hire a private investigator. Lawyers work with paper, they leave contracts and invoices. Private eyes are too nosy. I didn't need any of that. I needed total silence. I needed old friends, the kind who live by the street rules of New York, where trust is built on past favors, not checks from a bank. I drove my beat-up Buick to Red Hook. The harbor breeze carried the smell of salt. I pulled up in front of a run-down little diner where you could still get a cup of black coffee for $2. I picked a corner booth and sat down on a cracked leather seat. 5 minutes later, a small, wiry man with shifty eyes sat across from me. That was Sal. 10 years ago, Sal's newsstand was about to go under because his wife was sick. I handed him an envelope of cash, enough to cover his debts and her medicine. No interest. No paperwork. Just one working-class person helping another. "Mrs. Eleanor," Sal said in his raspy voice. "You're looking well. Long time no see." I didn't waste time. I pulled out a secret photo of Tiffany and her mother and laid it on the greasy table. "Sal," I looked him straight in the eye, "I need to know everything about these two. Not what the papers say. I want to know who they really are. What they eat, where they sleep, and most importantly, what they're running from." Sal squinted at the photo, gave a small nod, then slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Give me 2 days. You go back to baking." That afternoon, I drove to Prospect Park. October air was crisp. I walked to the stone bench overlooking the lake. A tall man with graying hair and a thick wool coat was sitting there, scattering breadcrumbs for the pigeons. People called him Mr. Costello. I called him Frank. 20 years ago, Frank was a feared debt collector. His daughter got hooked on heroin, and I was the one who pulled her out of that mess, gave her a job at the bakery so she could start over. Frank hung up his gloves after that. Because he owed me a life. "Frank," I called gently. He didn't turn around. "Eleanor, the wind's cold today. I need you to do something for me," I said as I handed him a slip of paper with the names Tiffany DeLuca and Karen Petrova written on it. "I need you to dig into these two. Every debt. Every black credit card. Every civil lawsuit. I want to know what skeletons they're hiding in their closets." Frank glanced at the paper, then slipped it into his pocket. "My daughter still talks about your apple pie. I'll stop by tomorrow night." The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place. Just 2 days later, my phone buzzed. It was Sal. "Mrs. Eleanor," he said, breathless. "It's all fake. That penthouse address on the Upper East Side they brag about? I went and checked. It's just a rented mailbox at a post office. No one lives there." I took a sip of tea, calm as ever. "So, where are they really?" "Astoria, Queens, a shabby second-floor rental, 2 months behind on rent." "And Karen's mom?" "Her real name is Karen Petrova. She's got a shoplifting charge from Macy's back in '99. I thanked Sal and hung up. One more piece in place. That night, Frank didn't call. He pulled up in his old black Cadillac and stopped right in front of my house. He didn't come in. He just rolled down the window and handed me a thick brown envelope. He nodded once, then drove off into the night. I took the envelope into the kitchen and spread everything out on my old wooden table. Under the yellow light, the truth lay bare. Inside weren't just credit reports filled with red flags and debt alerts, but something far more valuable. First, a list of credit card debts in the 6-figure range. Next, a handwritten ledger copied from a loan shark named Vinny. The interest was astronomical. That's why she needed money so badly. That's why she wanted me gone. And the killing blow was at the bottom. Frank had dug up copies of 2 civil lawsuits quietly settled in New Jersey and Connecticut. Plaintiffs, 2 other wealthy families. Defendant, Tiffany DeLuca. Charges, fraud, emotional manipulation to gain financial assets. The exact same playbook she was using on Cedric. I held the papers in my hand, feeling their weight. The anger had cooled, what remained was steel. I organized everything neatly into a file. I wasn't going to confront them in the kitchen or at some cafe. That would be too soft. I needed a big stage. I'd let them step onto their fake pedestal, and then I'd yank the rug out from under their feet. My 67th birthday, that would be the day everything changed. I waited exactly 3 days in absolute silence. No texts, no calls. I let the silence eat away at their greed and impatience. On the 4th morning, I picked up the phone and cleared my throat, making my breathing sound weak. "Cedric," I said softly, into the phone, letting a long breath hang in the air. "I just got back from the doctor. He says, my heart isn't doing well. Maybe it's time I started getting things in order." Cedric's voice came through, panicked. "What? Are you okay? Tiffany and I will come over right now." I smiled coldly at the empty wall. "Tomorrow morning, okay?" The next morning, I staged the scene right in the living room. I didn't turn on the heater, even though the October air was chilly. I threw on an old ash-gray cardigan and sat curled up in the armchair, clutching a hot cup of tea like I was trying to hold on to the last bit of warmth. When they walked in, all they saw was a tired, lonely old woman who'd given up. "Mom," Cedric said, sitting down and taking my hand. Tiffany sat beside him, looking worried. but her eyes were darting around, scanning everything. "I've been thinking a lot," I said slowly. "I'm old now. You can't take money with you when you die. Holding on to this house means nothing if my children aren't happy." Tiffany held her breath. I could hear her greedy heart pounding. I looked up and stared straight at her with a blindly trusting look. "Tiffany, I want to throw a big 67th birthday party. To make it up to you and Cedric, but I don't know much about fancy places. Can you help me? Pick the best venue, the finest wine. Think of it as my welcome gift." Then I made my move. I pulled a cold, black American Express Platinum business card from my pocket and laid it on the table, sliding it toward Tiffany. "Use this for everything. Don't worry about the limit. Invite all your high society friends. I want to see that world, just once." A flash of light hit Tiffany's eyes. She looked at that card like it was a treasure map. She tried to hide her victorious grin as she snatched it up. "Don't worry, Mom," she said sweetly. "I'll make this the most unforgettable birthday party in New York." "I trust you," I replied. Yes, it would be unforgettable, all right. In the days that followed, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Each ding from the bank was another knife. Tiffany stabbed into her own future. Ding. The Plaza, venue deposit, $50,000. Ding. Soho event design, $30,000. Ding. Rare wines purchase, $15,000. I knew she was inflating the costs, doubling or tripling them to skim some off the top. But I didn't block the card. I even called to praise her. "You're doing amazing, Tiffany. Everything sounds so professional." A week before the party, I asked Cedric to come meet me alone. This time, I was serious. I handed him a sealed envelope. "This is a copy of my lawyer Mr. Friedman's invitation. I've asked him to attend the party," I said. "That night, in front of everyone, I'll be announcing the most important decision of my life, handing over full control of Grandma's bakery and most of my assets to my one and only heir." Cedric's eyes lit up. He exhaled, convinced they had already won. He gripped my hand tightly. "You won't regret it, Mom. We'll take care of you." Once Cedric was gone, I turned back to my desk. There was one last thing to do. I pulled out 3 cheap brown envelopes and carefully wrote the names of the recipients. The first envelope was sent to the New York Police Department, NYPD, specifically the Financial Crimes Division. Inside was the complete file of fraud and theft evidence that Sal and Frank had collected. The second one was sent to 2 former victims' families in Connecticut and New Jersey. I invited them to witness justice. The third, I had a shoeshine kid deliver it to a seedy bar in Queens, hand it to a guy named Vinny. Inside was an invitation to a party at the Plaza, along with a handwritten note. "Your debtor will be here with lots of cash. Come and get it." That evening, I walked past an upscale bar. Through the glass, I saw Cedric and Tiffany sitting inside, raising glasses of champagne. Tiffany was laughing hysterically, talking on the phone full of smugness. "Told you, didn't I? Just wait. Next week, all of New York will be looking up to me. That old hag's as tame as a lamb now." Cedric looked at his wife with admiration, completely unaware he was just a disposable pawn. I pulled up the collar of my coat and walked into the shadows. The bait was taken, and this hook, once set, could only be ripped out through the throat. "Before the velvet curtain rises, I want to ask you, if you discovered your family was being threatened by a con artist, would you stay silent and try to win them over with kindness, or would you rise up, set a trap, and take back what's yours, even if it meant hurting your only son? Let me know what you'd choose." The whirring of the projector stopped, yanking me back to the present. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me, then looked up at the pitch-black screen behind. Down below, Tiffany and Mrs. Karen were still wearing smug smiles, though the corners of their mouths had begun to twitch. They thought this was a heartfelt tribute. I hit the button. The screen lit up. No soft music, no happy family photos. What appeared was a grainy, bluish-gray video from a hidden security camera in my hallway. Tiffany's voice came through the powerful surround sound system, echoing into every guest's ear. "Vinny, listen. I'm begging you. Just give me one more week. The money's coming, I swear." Tiffany froze. The glass in her hand slipped and shattered on the marble floor. The crash was sharp and piercing, but no one turned around. All eyes were glued to the screen. "What are you worried about? That old woman's halfway to the grave. I'm playing the sweet daughter-in-law here. One accidental fall down the stairs, And we're good. Gasps spread like wildfire. Elegant ladies raised their hands to their mouths. Wealthy husbands frowned and whispered to each other. And the son? He's a lovesick fool. I'll take everything and kick his sorry ass to the curb. The video ended and immediately cut to the next slide. A blown-up American Express credit card statement. In bold red letters, overdue balance, $154,000. Status, sent to collections. Next slide. A document from the Connecticut court. Defendant, Tiffany DeLuca. Charges, romance-based financial fraud. And the final blow. A black and white mugshot from 1999. In it, a tough-looking woman holding up an inmate ID board. Karen Petrova. Charge, grand theft. The woman in the photo looked exactly like Mrs. Karen standing down there, just with fewer wrinkles. What? What the hell is this? That's Karen, a man shouted. The room erupted into chaos. The high society guests backed away, forming an empty circle around the mother and daughter like they were contagious. Tiffany turned pale as a ghost, trembling as she tried to rush the stage. Turn it off. You're insane, she screamed. But before she could, the two main doors burst open. Bam! Two police officers in navy uniforms stepped inside, followed by a stern-faced detective in a gray suit. He walked straight toward the two women, voice full of authority. Tiffany DeLuca? And Karen Petrova? You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit financial fraud, document forgery, and making death threats. Tiffany stumbled backward, tripping on the hem of her dress. Who are you? I want my lawyer. You have the right to remain silent, the detective said coldly, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. Their nightmare wasn't over. Behind the police, two more people stepped forward. First, a classy middle-aged woman in gold-rimmed glasses. She stormed up, pointing a shaking finger at Tiffany, her voice trembling with rage. It's her. She tricked my son into signing a $200,000 loan and then vanished. Give my son his future back. It was Mrs. Vanderbilt, an old victim found by Mr. Costello. And then, from the shadows, a large bald man stepped out. Vinny. He held the invitation I'd sent him, his smile chilling. Hey, sweetheart. Thought you said I'd get paid this week? Funny, I heard you were planning to run off to Paris. Tiffany let out a blood-curdling scream. She turned to her mother for help, but Karen was already being cuffed, her arms twisted behind her back. No, it wasn't me, Karen cried, her wig falling off. She planned it all. My daughter made me do it. Mom! How could you? Tiffany spun around, eyes blazing. You're the one who told me to find some rich idiot to scam. It was a grotesque, tragicomic scene. Just moments ago, the two had acted like royalty. Now they were tearing into each other like wild animals. It took everything the cops had to pull them apart. The snap of the handcuffs on Tiffany's wrists echoed sharp and final. Cinderella's dream was over. As they dragged her away, she looked up at me, bloodshot eyes full of hatred. This evil old witch set me up. It's all her fault. She's a damn witch. I stood silent on the stage, gripping the remote tightly. I didn't say a word. The truth had already spoken loud and clear. I looked down. Cedric was standing there, frozen. His face was as white as paper. His eyes locked on the woman he once worshipped, now exposed as a cheap con artist. His whole world, his personal brand, his million-dollar future, shattered into dust right before his eyes. He watched as Tiffany was dragged away, then slowly turned to look at me. In his eyes, shock, unbearable shame, and a silent plea for forgiveness. But I didn't look at him. I looked toward my old friends, Mrs. Martha and Mr. Chen, who were watching me with respectful eyes. Around us, the flashes from guests' phones kept going off, live streaming this humiliating scene on social media. The heavy wooden door closed behind the police officers, cutting off the sound of sirens echoing from Fifth Avenue. A heavy silence took over. The orchestra had stopped playing. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with leftover food now created the suffocating atmosphere of a party's end. Tiffany's high society friends, the ones who had just been toasting with her, began reacting. Without saying a word, they quietly backed away. They avoided eye contact with me, grabbed their coats, and slipped out through the side door like ghosts afraid of light. Not a goodbye, not an apology. They ran from this disgrace like fleeing a sinking ship. In just moments, the room was empty. But I wasn't alone. From the corner, my real friends walked toward me. Mrs. Martha wrapped an arm around my shoulder, holding me gently. Mr. Chen came up and placed his calloused hand, hardened from years of hot irons, on mine. A silent gesture of comfort that meant more than 1,000 pretty words. They formed a wall around me, holding me steady, protecting me from falling apart. In that wide open space, Cedric stood alone. His expensive tux was now wrinkled. His face was pale as paper. He looked at me, eyes wide with panic. The glamorous world he had traded his honor to build had just crumbled before his eyes. Then, as if his legs gave out, he collapsed. He fell to the cold marble floor, right beneath the stage. "Mom!" His voice cracked, sobbing. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was blind. Mom!" He crawled toward me, reaching out to grab the hem of my dress like a toddler who just made a mistake. I looked down at my son. My heart clenched, aching like someone was squeezing it. That was my flesh and blood, but I didn't reach out to lift him. My eyes no longer held the softness of a gentle mother. They were the eyes of a woman who had been utterly betrayed. I picked up the mic one more time. My hand no longer trembled. "Blindness is not an excuse, Cedric." My voice rang out, clear and emotionless. "It's a choice. You chose to shut your eyes. You chose to believe sweet lies instead of your mother." Cedric froze, his hand dropping to the floor. Tears streamed down his face. I turned toward Mr. Friedman, the lawyer standing quietly in the corner. He gave me a slight nod. "This estate," I said, each word firm and steady, "was built with my sweat, my tears, and your father Michael's life. It is not a toy for scammers. It's not something you get to gamble away chasing fake status." I took a deep breath. "Therefore, in front of everyone here, I declare, 90% of my assets, including my shares in Grandma's bakery and all real estate, will be transferred immediately into a trust fund." Cedric jerked his head up, his eyes wide with horror. "This fund will be used to establish scholarships for the children of firefighters who died in New York. To honor my husband, Michael. Your father's money will go to people who truly deserve it." The room went completely silent. Only Cedric's sobs could be heard. I looked at my son, still collapsed on the floor. "And you, Cedric?" He looked at me, hopeless. "You're still young. You have the hands and the mind I raised. Look at your hands." He looked down at his hands, well-groomed, untouched by any hardship for months. "Go out there and create your own worth. Learn again how to earn money with sweat, not by living off someone else's dream. That's the lesson you should have learned a long time ago." Then I turned to the elderly housekeeper. "Maria." "Yes, ma'am," she sniffled. "Thank you for being here. Now, go home first and help me with one thing. Pack Cedric's clothes into one suitcase," I said loud enough for every word to hit Cedric. "Just one. Only the essentials. Don't include anything Tiffany bought." I paused and looked straight into my son's eyes. "Then leave the suitcase by the door. And change the locks for me." Cedric was stunned. His whole body shook. That was exactly what he and Tiffany planned to do to me, kick me out with a single suitcase. Now, karma had flipped, landing squarely on him in the fairest way possible. "Mom," Cedric whispered, "are you really kicking me out? I have nowhere else to go. The world out there is huge, son." I set the mic down. "And it's fair. You reap what you sow." I turned my back on him. That moment hurt more than anything I'd ever experienced. But I knew if I went soft now, I'd ruin him for life. To raise a man, sometimes a mother has to be cruel enough to push him out of the nest, even if there's a cliff below. He has to learn to fly on his own, or crash, and rebuild himself from the pieces. I stepped off the stage, walking toward the exit, where Mrs. Martha and Mr. Chen were waiting. I didn't look back. I was scared that if I did, I wouldn't be able to leave. The doors of the Plaza Hotel opened. The New York night air rushed in, icy but fresh. I stepped outside, leaving behind the dazzling chandeliers and the ashes of broken illusions. My life truly turned a page that day. A year flew by in the blink of an eye. October in New York always brings a quiet, indescribable beauty. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil after last night's rain and the faint fragrance of late-blooming roses trying to open one last time before winter arrived. I sat quietly on the oak chair in the small garden behind my house in Brooklyn Heights, holding a hot cup of coffee in my hands. I watched the first rays of sunlight slip through the leaves, dancing on the dew-covered grass. This peace, this precious silence, was worth more than all the crystal chandeliers or the expensive champagne glasses at the plaza's ballroom last year. On the small round table next to me was a fresh copy of the New York Times. I flipped to the inside pages, to the legal news section. A tiny piece of news, tucked in the bottom left corner. Tiffany DeLuca, real name Jessica Myler, and her accomplice Karen Petrova were sentenced to 15 years in prison for organized financial fraud and document forgery. I read that line twice. There was no sense of triumph, no gloating, just a light calm spreading through my chest. Like when you close an old dusty book and place it on a high shelf. That story was over. I folded the paper and set it aside. Life goes on. Grandma's bakery is now managed by Maria and a young girl I trained back when she was just a cashier. She's doing a great job, even better than I expected. Sales are growing steadily, and more importantly, the butter cookies still taste just like they did on day one. The iron gate at the front of the house creaked softly. I squinted toward it. A figure stood there, hesitating. No sleek BMW pulled up at the curb. No loud engine revving for attention. He had walked from the subway station at the corner. His frame looked thinner, sun-darkened, his shoulders no longer puffed up with pride in a borrowed suit. They sagged. But it was the kind of weight that comes after a long day of work, the steady weight of a man who knows how to carry responsibility. It was Cedric. He was wearing a simple brown uniform from a freight company, his name embroidered on the chest. The shiny leather shoes he used to wear had been replaced by dusty work boots. He didn't walk straight into the house like he used to. He stood outside the iron fence, one hand lightly resting on the bars, unsure whether to ring the bell. In his other hand was a tiny azalea plant, the kind you'd find for a few dollars at a flower stand. I set my coffee down, stood up, and walked toward the gate. My slippers crunched on the gravel path. As I got closer, Cedric looked up. His eyes were sunken, with a few lines at the corners I'd never noticed before. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice was low, hoarse, and a bit awkward. He didn't dare meet my eyes for long. "Hi, son," I replied, calm. Cedric lifted the plant up, looking sheepish, like a little boy. I was on my way home from work and saw them at the flower market down the street. I remembered you liked azaleas. So I bought a pot for you." He didn't beg. He didn't complain about being broke. He didn't bring up the past. He just brought a small gift, paid for with the money he earned himself. I looked at the plant, then looked at my son. For the past year, I hadn't called, hadn't sent him a single dollar. I let him struggle with the debts Tiffany left behind, find a place to stay on his own, find a job. I had been ruthless enough to let him hit rock bottom. And today, he had started climbing back up, just the first steps, but on his own. "Come in," I said as I opened the gate, and stepped aside. "I just made coffee, it's still hot." Cedric looked slightly surprised, then nodded. "Okay. Thanks, Mom." We sat across from each other in the little garden. The silence between us wasn't heavy or suffocating anymore like that night at the plaza. It was the kind of quiet that helps heal old wounds. Cedric talked about his job. He was working as a delivery guy and warehouse loader. "I have to get up at 4 in the morning, Mom," he said, slowly turning the coffee cup in his hands. "Gotta be at the warehouse early to sort stuff." My back was killing me at first. I didn't think I could take it. But after a while, I got used to it. The guys at work are nice too. They've taught me a lot. I looked at his hands. His fingers had become rough, with a few calluses and healing scrapes. Those hands weren't soft like they used to be. They were starting to look like his father's. Like mine. In Cedric's voice, I heard something I hadn't heard in a long time: pride. He didn't complain about how hard it was. He spoke about his work with a kind of respect. He understood that every dollar he earned now, though small, was his. No one could take it from him, and no one could look down on him for it. "Wait here a minute." I got up and went to the kitchen. The oven had just finished. I took out 2 plates, placed a hot slice of apple pie on each, and sprinkled a bit of cinnamon on top. I brought them out to the garden and set one down in front of Cedric. "Eat, sweetheart, it's your favorite." Cedric looked at the pie. The rising steam blurred his eyes, already tinged red. His hand trembled a little as he picked up the fork. He took a small bite and chewed slowly, like he was tasting a piece of childhood, a piece of the family he'd nearly lost forever. He looked up at me, tears rolling down his cheeks, but he smiled. "Tastes just like it used to, Mom." I smiled back. Same flour, same apples. Only the baker's a little older now. I know the road to full reconciliation is still a long one. Trust between people is like a porcelain plate that's been shattered. I can mend it with gold, and it may still be useful, but the cracks will always remain, a silent reminder. But this morning, when I saw my son eat that piece of cake with genuine appreciation, I knew the sunrise wasn't just for my garden. It was starting to shine, just a little, on our relationship too. I no longer have a huge fortune on paper. I've donated almost all of it. I'm no longer a powerful woman. But I have true friends, I have peace in my heart, and I have hope for a son who's slowly learning and growing from his mistakes. That's enough. I took a sip of my coffee and looked up at the bright blue sky over Brooklyn. My friends, my revenge story ends here, but the aftertaste it leaves behind still lingers. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to send a final message to those of you who followed me through this stormy journey. A lesson I had to pay for with my entire life to learn. Never let anyone tell you your worth is trash, even if they're wrapped in silk and gold, even if they stand on sparkling pedestals. Your value lies in your hard-working hands and your honest heart. And to all the children out there, remember this: parents are the roots. You may grow tall, stretch your branches toward the clouds, but if you cut the roots, the tree withers. Don't wait for the storm to hit before you realize where the only door that's always open for you truly is. Just remember, sunrise is always most beautiful after the storm. I wish you a life of peace. The story you just heard has had names and places changed to protect the identities of those involved. We don't share these stories to judge, but in the hope that someone out there will pause and reflect, how many mothers are quietly suffering in their own homes? I truly wonder, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you stand up and fight to reclaim your voice? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story, or any suggestions you might have to help us improve our content. God always blesses the brave, and I truly believe courage will lead us to brighter days. Right now, on the end screen, I'm going to leave you with two of the most beloved stories on our channel. I think they'll surprise you. Thank you for staying with me all the way to this moment. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next stories.